Good morning. Back for episode 24, reading 10 minutes a day from the Anarchist Handbook, Michael Malice, and really fantastic book. Really collects a good pedigree of anarchist thought going back quite a ways. So highly recommended. Anyway, today we're starting on page 81. We're going to be finishing up Mikhail Bakunin. And then we're going to be starting Lysander Spooner. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. And let's go. Finishing up Bakunin. If I bow before the authority of the specialists and avow my readiness to follow, to a certain extent and as long as may seem to me necessary, their indications and even their directions, it is because their authority is imposed on me by no one, neither by men nor by God. Ions and even their directions. Otherwise, I would repel them with horror and bid the devil take their counsels, their directions, and their services, certain that they would make me pay by the loss of my liberty and self-respect for such scraps of truth, wrapped in a multitude of lies as they might give me. I bow before the authority of special men because it is imposed on me by my own reason. I am conscious of my own ability to grasp in all its detail and positive development any very large portion of human knowledge. The greatest intelligence would not be equal to a comprehension of the whole. Thence results, for science as well as for industry, the necessity of the division and association of labor. I receive and I give, such is human life. Each directs and is directed in his turn. Therefore, there is no fixed and constant authority, but a continual exchange of mutual, temporary, and above all, voluntary authority and subordination. This same reason forbids me, then, to recognize a fixed, constant, and universal authority, because there is no universal man, no man capable of grasping in all that wealth of detail, without which the application of science to life is impossible, all the sciences, all the branches of social life. And if such universality could ever be realized in a single man, and if he wished to take advantage thereof to impose his authority upon us, it would be necessary to drive this man out of society, because his authority would inevitably reduce all the others to slavery and imbecility. I do not think that society ought to maltreat men of genius as it has done hitherto, but neither do I think it should indulge them too far. Still less accord them any privileges or exclusive rights whatsoever, and that for three reasons. First, because it would often mistake a charlatan for a man of genius. Second, because through such a system of privileges, it might transform into a charlatan even a real man of genius, demoralize him and degrade him. And finally, because it would establish a master over itself. And that concludes Mikhail Bakunin. We're going to move into chapter 8 on page 83. And this is Lysander Spooner, No Treason, number 4, The Constitution of No Authority, 1870. And here's Michael Malice's introduction. Abolitionist and attorney Lysander Spooner's essay, No Treason, consisted of 3 parts. It is the third part, oddly numbered as 6, that holds the most sway today. The Constitution is like a, quote, no-gun zone sign for conservatives, in that the only people it would bind are those who are already generally honest and peaceable. The ones who would lie or commit harm would simply look at the piece of paper and scoff. With unrelenting logic, Spooner dissects the sanctity of the Constitution and demonstrates that it cannot be said to have moral authority over anyone. Part 1, from Spooner. The Constitution has no inherent, and I blow it. The Constitution has no inherent authority or obligation. It has no authority or obligation at all, unless as a contract between man and man. And it does not so much as even purport to be a contract between persons now existing. It purports at most to be only a contract between persons living 80 years ago. Again, remember this was written in 1870. And it can be supposed to have been a contract then only between persons who had already come to years of discretion, so as to be competent to make reasonable and obligatory contracts. Furthermore, we know historically that only a small portion, even of the people then existing, were consulted on the subject, or asked, or permitted to express either their consent or dissent in any formal manner. Those persons, if any, who did give their consent formally are all dead now. Most of them have been dead 40, 50, 60, or 70 years. And the Constitution, so far as it was their contract, died with them. They had no natural power or right to make it obligatory upon their children. It is not only plainly impossible in the nature of things that they could bind their posterity, but they did not even attempt to bind them. That is to say, the instrument does not purport to be an agreement between anybody but, quote, the people then existing. Nor does it either expressly or impliedly assert any right, power, or disposition on their part to bind anybody but themselves. Let's see. Its language is, quote, we the people of the United States, that is, the people then existing in the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. It is plain, in the first place, that this language, as an agreement, purports to be only what it at most really was, a contract between the people then existing, and, of necessity, binding as a contract only upon those then existing. In the second place, the language neither expresses nor implies that they had any intention or desire, nor that they imagined that they had any right or power to bind their, quote, posterity to live under it. It does not say that their posterity will, shall, or must live under it. It only says, in effect, that their hopes and motives in adopting it were that it might prove useful to their posterity as well as to themselves, by promoting their union, safety, tranquility, liberty, etc. Suppose an agreement were entered into in this form. Quote, we, the people of Boston, agree to maintain a fort on Governor's Island to protect ourselves and our posterity against invasion. This agreement, as an agreement, would clearly bind nobody but the people then existing. Secondly, it would assert no right, power, or disposition on their part to compel their posterity to maintain such a fort. It would only indicate that the supposed welfare of their posterity was one of the motives that induced the original parties to enter into the agreement. When a man says he is building a house for himself and his posterity, he does not mean to be understood as saying that he has any thought of binding them, nor is it to be inferred that he is so foolish as to imagine that he has any right or power to bind them, to live in it. So far as they are concerned, he only means to be understood as saying that his hopes and motives in building it are that they, or at least some of them, may find it for their happiness to live in it. So when a man says he is planting a tree for himself and his posterity, he does not mean to be understood as saying that he has any thoughts of compelling them, nor is it to be inferred that he is such a simpleton as to imagine that he has any right or power to compel them to eat the fruit. So far as they are concerned, he only means to say that his hopes and motives in planting the tree are that its fruit may be agreeable to them. So it was with those who originally adopted the Constitution. Whatever may have been their personal intentions, the legal meaning of their language, so far as their posterity was concerned, simply was that their hopes and motives in entering into the agreement were that it might prove useful and acceptable to their posterity, that it might promote their union, safety, tranquility, and welfare, and that it might tend, quote, to secure to them the blessings of liberty. The language does not assert nor at all imply any right, power, or disposition on the part of the original parties to the agreement to compel their posterity to live under it. If they had intended to bind their posterity to live under it, they should have said that their object was not to, quote, secure to them the blessings of liberty, but to make slaves of them. For if their posterity are bound to live under it, they are nothing less than the slaves of their foolish, tyrannical, and dead grandfathers. It cannot be said that the Constitution formed, quote, the people of the United States for all time into a corporation. It does not speak of, quote, the people as a corporation, but as individuals. A corporation does not describe itself as we, nor as people, nor as ourselves. Nor does a corporation in legal language have any posterity. It supposes itself to have, and speaks of itself as having, perpetual existence as a single individuality. And we're going to just wrap that up. Again, wrapping up Mikhail Bakunin today and moving into Lysander Spooner. We're going to stop this at the bottom of page 85. Again, 10 minutes a day. The Anarchist Handbook, organized by Michael Malice. Get yourself a copy. And we'll see you tomorrow.